Hey guys, welcome to the latest episode of the 40/40 Vision podcast, the ultimate sports history pod where hindsight is 40/40. Before we get started, let's pay some bills and hear from our presenting sponsors.
The champ is here! 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 The champ
What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 6 of the 40/40 Vision podcast, the ultimate sports history pod brought to you by Sideline Sports. I'm your host, Khaled Abdallah, and with me today is my fellow host, Osama and Khaled. How's it going, man?
Hey, I'm good, man. We're already at 6 episodes. I feel like we've done more than that. All right.
Yeah, it's not quite a milestone yet, but we're getting there. So today we're taking a break from the what-if moments, and we're going to be discussing the career of the GOAT, Tom Brady. So Brady just announced his retirement a few days ago. We're going to take a look back at his career and maybe discuss a few what-ifs along the way. Just for reference, we're recording this episode on February 5th, 2022. So like I said, just a few days after he officially announced his retirement after 20 plus years in the NFL. So, yeah. I guess we can start with the Brady journey. Where did the Brady journey start, and what was his road to the NFL like?
Yeah, so he grew up in the Bay Area. That's well documented. Went in San Mateo, went to Junipero High School. It's a private all-boys high school. It's also where, coincidentally, Barry Bonds went. So two GOATs in their sport went to the same high school, coincidentally.
And Lynn Swan was in there too.
Oh, well, there you go. Another random nugget. So Sarah went to Michigan and then was drafted by the Patriots in 2000. The 199th overall pick in the 6th round. He's definitely considered to be the greatest draft pick in football history, given where he went and what his career output was.
So yeah, I always wondered why he was drafted so low. I mean, obviously the guy ends up being the GOAT, so there was something there, and I wonder why so many teams ended up passing on the guy. And I think part of it was he had kind of a weird career at the University of Michigan, played there for 4 years. The first 2 years, he backed up Brian Griese, who ended up being, a pretty good NFL quarterback, nothing special. And then the last 2 years, he competed with Drew Henson for the starting job. So I think Cowboys fans probably know who Drew Henson is, but not too many people other than them. And he ends up, having, like, in the grand scheme of things, he was pretty successful at Michigan. He beats Alabama before they were, the Nick Saban Alabama in the Orange Bowl. And he ended up pretty high on the Michigan, passing records and things like that. So what was it about him that dropped him so low? It dropped his draft stock so low.
I think it was just based on physical statistics and appearance, right? He didn't really put up mind-boggling stats at the combine. Didn't really look like a comic book hero or anything like that. It looked pretty average in his pictures. So I think some of that factored in when the Patriots were looking at quarterbacks. And by the way, it wasn't that draft overall didn't exactly produce a bunch of Hall of Famers or anything like that. I think Mark Bulger and Tim Rattay or something were the other quarterback prospects in that draft. And
yeah, it was
looking at Tim Rattay and Tom Brady before ultimately going with him. It's funny. He kind of called it on his own draft day. He's like, look, my best asset as a player is that in the fourth quarter, when the game's on the line, I just want to win. I don't want my team to lose. So he did show flashes of that, like you said, when they came back over Alabama. He looked great. I think when Brian Griese and Scott Griesbach, his Michigan quarterback predecessors, they would say he needed to work on reading blitzes and complicated defenses. So he knew he had lessons to learn, but I think he was very self-conscious of them. He kind of called his own shot.
Yeah, and he even Darren Ravel from formerly of ESPN tells the same story about Brady, and he had like a resume prepared in case he didn't get drafted. He was going to go work in finance or something. So I guess he acknowledged his own shortcomings, and he he knew that he probably wasn't going to go, be a first or second day draft pick. So, but yeah, if you look back at the list of guys taken ahead of him, it's pretty bleak. There's Chad Pennington, who ended up being a pretty good starter with the Jets and the Dolphins. Giovanni Carmazzi, who doesn't even have a Pro Football Reference page. I don't think he took a snap in the regular season. Chris Redman, okay backup for the Ravens. T. Martin, I have no idea where he played. And then Mark Bulger was probably the second best quarterback in this group who had a good career with the Rams. So it's not like the rest of the guys blew us away. But I think for all the other episodes that we've done so far, the what ifs, it could be, what if they drafted Tom Brady and everybody had 5.5 rounds basically to pick him. So yeah, there's something about him. He didn't look good on paper. And we've all seen that famous picture of him in his underwear at the combine. And like he looks unhealthy. Like you said, he's just like this. You would never look at this guy, but yeah, this is going to be the greatest NFL player of all time. So.
And what a career he ended up producing. Obviously, he didn't start right away. His rookie year, he only played a couple of games, a handful of snaps before coming in the following season when Drew Bledsoe got laid out by Mo Lewis of the Jets. So he started 316 games, 243 wins. His career pass completions, 7,263. Pass completions in a season, 485. He attempted over 11,000 career pass attempts. He has the record for most touchdowns, 624, most career passing yards, 84,500. Out of 47 playoff games, he won 35, 86 playoff touchdowns, 13,000 playoff passing yards, over 3,000 passing yards in the Super Bowl alone. He has a whole season worth of passing yards in the Super Bowl. These are a bunch of records that are just never going to get broken because he put them together over 22 years.
Yeah, all the cumulative stats in the regular season and the playoffs, those are untouchable. There's maybe, one of these guys that got started young, like Pat Mahomes, one of these guys that didn't sit on the bench too long. Maybe they have a chance to break those just because of the way the NFL is going. It's more wide open. But yeah, it's pretty, I would say, very, very unlikely that anybody touches these. Maybe the regular season records of, not the single season records could probably get broken with the additional game and stuff, but all these cumulative ones, just no one's even coming close. So what was your first memory of Tom Brady on a football field? Did you watch him in college? Was it in the NFL? I know you talked about the Mo Lewis hit on Drew Bledsoe that opened the door for him. I remember watching that game live. I was about 12 years old, and it was terrifying. It looked like he died on the sideline. So credit to Drew Bledsoe for coming back from that and playing again. Even played later that season. But yeah, what was your first memory of Brady?
Yeah, I'm about a year younger than you, so I don't remember specifically the Mo Lewis hit. I remember Drew Bledsoe was the starting quarterback. I watched him lose to the Super Bowl against the Packers a few years earlier. I was familiar with Drew Bledsoe and remember Drew Bledsoe getting hurt. So when Tom Brady came in, I just kind of remember vaguely him playing out the season. But my first actual memory of growing up in the Bay Area is the Tuck Rule game. Yep. The year he started. I know you're a Raiders fan, and that probably doesn't sound very pleasant to hear. That is my first memories because that game was very vivid. The snow, hard-fought game. I had some friends that were Raiders fans. We watched the game together, and obviously that controversial ending with the sack that ended up being an incomplete pass was made it unforgettable. We wouldn't forget the name Tom Brady again after that, even if he ended up not producing anything. Given what it meant to Raider fans here in the Bay Area, his name was not going anywhere.
Yeah, we covered this at length during our Raiders episode, where it was such a turning point for both franchises, and the legend of Tom Brady started that day. But that was also my first real memory of him as a player. I mean, he wasn't very remarkable in that season. He didn't do anything too special. Even in that game, a lot of that was defense. Even the famous drive where the Tuck Rule happened, it was set up by a big punt return. So he didn't he obviously introduced himself on the grand stage there, but it wasn't until the Super Bowl later that year where he really became, or he started to become, Tom Brady. Before that, or in the first season, he was carried by a great defense, and that tuck rule was what was the catalyst really to him, becoming that legend. But yeah, I remember that was the first time I cried because of sports. I was 12 years old. It was I had just become a Raiders fan maybe a year or two before. I just picked a team. I was so excited. I get my hopes, crushed by an interpretation of an NFL rule. And then I never would have guessed, not even for a few years after that this guy would go on to become, the greatest of all time. So, but yeah, I think we're both around the same age, like you said. So that memory is probably the most vivid for us.
And he would go on to make many, many people cry after that for several more years.
Yeah, it wasn't just Raiders fans. It was Jets fans twice a year, Bills fans twice a year, Dolphins fans once a year because he could never win in Miami for some reason. But yeah, a lot of people cried after that. So there's, he had a really long career, and it's pretty clear now that he's the unquestioned, if not the greatest football player of all time. People probably still give that to Jerry Rice, but the greatest quarterback of all time is unquestionable. When did that change for you? Because I'm sure you, as a Niners fan, you probably held on to Joe Montana for quite a while and his ring. So when did that change for you?
Yeah, it's a good question, because when the emergence of Aaron Rodgers kind of put into question, like, who is the most talented quarterback? Peyton Manning obviously put together a very good career. So looking at Tom Brady versus Rodgers and Manning, and obviously the Montana thing, because Montana obviously put together his career in a decade, in about 6-7 years or so, basically. I questioned it. Yeah, it's like, yeah, Tom Brady's put together some good runs. I think he had 3 to 4 Super Bowls also. So when he tied Montana, he said, wow, yeah, someone else actually got to 4. Been a while since we'd seen that much success at the quarterback position. And then Aaron Rodgers goes one season and throws like 2 Hail Marys. So I'm like, well, hell, who's supposed to be better than Aaron Rodgers? This guy's doing a bunch of crazy things too, like throwing on the run across his body, just things that Tom Brady can't do physically.
Yeah, I was going to say, in terms of like physical talent, you probably give the edge to Rodgers, but yeah, go on.
Yeah, but the Falcons Super Bowl for me is like unequivocally what goats him, because we've seen Tom Brady comebacks plenty of times. This is one of those where it was 21-0 at halftime, or maybe 21-3 at halftime. Like, this game looked over. It's a Super Bowl. They're shitting the bed. He threw a pick 6 in that game, which was really uncharacteristic of him. They couldn't move the ball. The Falcons did everything right that whole season. And you kind of start to see, they force a turnover. He starts completing passes. He starts hitting guys, and the Falcons stop running the ball. They just throw themselves out of the game, and he throws for hundreds of yards, and all of them to James White for the most part on those checkdowns.
Wasn't James White? James White wasn't the MVP, but I think he broke the record for.
He was the Super Bowl MVP. I think they named James White the Super Bowl MVP for running.
That in itself is crazy. So I guess thank you, Kyle Shanahan, and was it Dan Quinn? That was the Falcons coach.
Yeah.
For crowning Brady. I remember very vividly watching this game, and I don't want to say I thought it was over, but it was 28-3 with 2 minutes left in the third quarter. And I remember, I was at a party, and at that point you're kind of half watching the game. I'm like knee deep in some ice cream and some 7-layer dip. And then you could feel it. Things just started to flip. The Matt Ryan fumble, there was a couple big stops, and all of a sudden it's getting tighter and tighter. And you just, as a longtime Brady hater, I think up until that game, I was just like, I had this pit in my stomach. I'm like, he's going to win this. They're going to pull this out. The evil empire is going to crush these upstart Falcons, and they're going to do it. And after that, I went from hating to just, there's no point in hating. It's like an admiration. It's a begrudging respect at that point for what they did. So yeah, it's the greatest comeback of all time. Yeah.
Yeah, and in that game, I took a screenshot. I was rewatching some of it a couple of days ago. It was 28-12 with 8.5 minutes to go. On 3rd and 1, the Falcons are throwing the ball, and they only have a timeout left. Dante Hightower comes around the corner and just barrels over Matt Ryan, and the Patriots recover a fumble in Falcons territory.
Yeah, I was going to say in Falcons territory. Yeah, obviously it's not just one-sided where the Patriots are coming back. Like, obviously there's a lot of mistakes on the Falcons side, just like anything else. But that was an insane fourth quarter. There was this crazy plays with, that fumble, the strip sack, the crazy catch that Julio Jones made on the sideline where he seemed to jump 12 feet in the air. Then there was like that double clutch catch over the middle by Julian Edelman. I don't remember what down it was, but that was a pretty big play in the game. And it was funny because I think that was a year before that, or 2 years before, where they beat the Seahawks on the pick at the end zone. But it was really the first time that a crazy offensive play went in favor of the Patriots, if I remember correctly. Like,
yep.
There was the helmet catch, then there was the Jermaine Kearse catch where he like bobbled it and tipped it up and then caught it on his back and almost rolled into the end zone. I think 2 plays before the pick by Malcolm Butler. So I guess Brady finally got like his signature offensive play that was just like a freak play that went in their favor.
Yeah, that was incredible. That it was on the last drive when they scored and converted a 2-point conversion as well. 2 2-point conversions. It was a 19-0 fourth quarter. And I remember in slow motion, it was unreal how his concentration, he just caught the ball while it was falling down and secured it.
Watching the replay, it was like half an inch off the ground to make that play. Yeah.
You could see the magic coming together for them and unraveling for Atlanta. So yeah, for me, that no doubt was like, this guy is the best. It comes to a point where the winning matters. Like, I don't care how talented some other quarterbacks might be. When it matters the most, this guy doesn't really lose. He always wins. He's the best winner in the history of football.
Yeah, and it becomes almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Is everyone knows that this guy, it takes something insane to happen for the most part for him to lose a game, much less lose a Super Bowl. So if you are ahead, if you're beating his team, it gets in your head, right? Of, oh man, that's Tom Brady. He's going to come back. They're going to find a way to come back, even if he has nothing to do with it. Like we saw it firsthand a couple weeks ago against the Rams. Odell Beckham said after the game, when things weird, like awry for the Rams, he's like, man, that's the GOAT on the other sideline. And then this like weird stuff seems to happen. Like he has some juju over the game where like a bad snap or a guy that never fumbles. And, just all this crazy stuff happens. And you wonder how much of that is just the mental like pressure and fatigue of playing against this guy and thinking, man, we have to be perfect to beat Tom Brady. And they kind of psych themselves out.
I feel like he's developed telekinesis. So he'll just, if you're kicking a field goal, he'll just stare at it with his mind and move it wide left.
Yeah, he uses the force to push it.
Yeah, he'll just stare at your center, and then you'll have like a bad snap, and his defense will cover the football. I think he's just from standing on the sidelines, he can make things happen with his mind.
I mean, and speaking of defense, I mean, the guy has never had a bad defense. I mean, he has over the course of his Pats career, but every year that he's won the Super Bowl, they had a top 10 scoring defense. So do with that information what you will. I'm sure it helped him a lot to have that, in his back pocket, but you still can't win without scoring points, and you can't win without a great quarterback. And obviously he has plenty of those comebacks and stuff. That's what he became known for, was the 2-minute drill to win or tie the game. And it helped that he's had some great kickers in his career too. So, everybody just does better when they're around Tom Brady.
Do you know what their worst offensive their whole entire DVOA rank was? It was in 2018 when they were 17 when they went to the Super Bowl and played the Eagles. Their DVOA was 31st in the league.
Is that because of Matt Patricia?
They just couldn't stop. Yeah, I mean that whole season, it was very uncharacteristic. Their expected points per game was higher, but they allowed 32 points per game as a defense, which is just a huge red flag. A Bill Belichick defense giving up 32 points a game is crazy.
And for some reason, Detroit wanted to hire Matt Patricia. But yeah, in the years that he's won the Super Bowl, they had, in terms of points allowed, so scoring defense, they were 7th, 1st, 8th, 2nd, 1st, 6th. So there's, a pattern here. But again, not to discredit him. I mean, he still had to score points and win the game. So aside from the Super Bowls, or I guess aside from the Falcons Super Bowl, is there another Super Bowl performance that stands out to you? I mean, I know there's a lot to pick from. So
yeah, let me pick from one of the 10 Super Bowl appearances that he's had. What comes top of mind is it was in a losing effort, but the Eagles Super Bowl was amazing because he threw for
I was going to say yards. The same. Yeah.
If you had told me before the game that the Patriots were going to lose and Tom Brady threw for 500 yards and never punted the ball, I would have been like, you're a liar. There's no way that Tom Brady throws for 500 yards, doesn't punt the ball, and they lose. Just their defense was bad that year, and the Eagles were just, I've said it on different podcasts, lightning in a bottle. They just found their moment and they took advantage of it and stopped really a really good Patriots offense and shredded a really bad Patriots defense.
Yeah, the Eagles were just the team of destiny that year. Even that game, there's a lot of weird shit that happened in that game too. The Philly special, Brandon Cooks getting knocked out on a play that was like borderline dirty. They ran a Philly special kind of their own where Brady drops that pass. Maybe if he catches that pass, and differently. And even with all of that, and then in the last Eagles drive where Zach Ertz was initially ruled down or wasn't ruled down and scored, but then they pulled the play back, so it took more time off the clock. So there's just all these like little factors that could have led to a Pats win. And even with all that, he was still set up with a 2-minute drill, ball on his own 20, 25, and you're like, I can't bet against Tom Brady in this case. Like they're going to win this game. And then a few plays later, gets strip sacked by Brandon Graham. So yeah, it was just one of 10 insane plays. Oh yeah, and Malcolm Butler doesn't play that game for some inexplicable reason. We still don't know why. The Super Bowl hero from a few years before that is benched for some reason, and we still don't know why. Maybe if he plays, they win that game. Who knows?
That's a sneak preview of our Patriots What If episode coming one of these days.
Yeah, I knew we were going to discuss a few what ifs along the way. We couldn't resist the temptation, but yeah, I think we both agree that Eagles Super Bowl was just it was just incredible the way he played, and even after losing his number one receiver, Brandon Cooks. So yeah, that was. I mean, it's hard to pick 1 out of 10 because he has the comeback, the 2-minute drive against the Rams. He does the same thing against the Panthers. So it's a theme, but I don't think he's played as well as he has, in that Eagles game in another Super Bowl.
And a lot of those Super Bowls weren't exactly thrilling affairs in most cases, right? They were defensive grindouts, field goal fests. He had this really strange record of not scoring in the first quarter in a bunch of Super Bowls that he appeared in. I don't think he had a single scoring first drive until maybe the most recent win against the Chiefs. He just had a bizarre, and it's not like he was a choker in the Super Bowl or anything like that. He still put on some big performances. But it wasn't until the Seahawks was probably his most entertaining offensive output, the way they came back, because he threw a couple of interceptions in that game to get them back in there, hitting Gronkowski one-on-one against a linebacker, finding Edelman, finding Amendola to come back against Seattle. But it was definitely the Eagles one that is like, I would buy this shit on pay-per-view if I could. It was just such an entertaining game.
Yeah, even that's an underrated comeback. I mean, they weren't down 28-3, but they were down 24-14 with 5 minutes left in the third. So he still had to come back. But yeah, the Eagles won. That one stands out. I think there's a theme in his Super Bowls. I don't think he's won any Super Bowl by more than one score. So when he's involved, and I don't think he obviously hasn't lost one by more than one score, because all three losses were, I think 7 points or less. To the Eagles, that was 7 or 8, actually. That's the biggest margin of defeat for him. And of course the Chiefs one, where they just blew out the Chiefs a couple years ago. But as a Patriot, he didn't play any close any blowout Super Bowls. So when he's in there, we're getting entertainment value for sure. So aside from the Super Bowls, are there any random moments that you think about? Some crazy accomplishments or plays that he's made, over the years?
Yeah, so I have a few stats and memories that come to mind when I think about him. So after he retired, the numbers came out about Super Bowls. We decided to crunch it together, and he played in 18% of the Super Bowls, and he won 13% of the 55 Super Bowls played.
That's not that record's not going anywhere.
Right. Let's see. He, after turning 37, he won 4 Super Bowls and was 17-4 in the playoffs. That in itself, is goated. He's never had a losing season in 21 seasons as a starter. They went 9-7 one time. That was
his second year as a starter.
They didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Let's see. We talked about the 3,000 yards in the Super Bowl. He's never tied in the 22 years as a player in the NFL. You'd think you'd get at least one chance to do that. Never did.
Yeah, in a quarter century. Yeah,
in his last season, he led the NFL in passing yards, touchdowns, attempts, and pass yards per game.
At the age of 44.
Which is what made his retirement kind of, everyone was skeptical. Like, are you sure you're going out like really on top still?
Yeah, at least he's not going out like Big Ben or Peyton that last year, where he couldn't throw more than 20 yards downfield, or even Drew Brees by the end of his career. So he probably saw those guys and was like, I don't want to go out like that. I want to go out, even if he didn't win a Super Bowl, he could very likely win the MVP in a week's time. So yeah, he wanted to go out on his own terms.
More Super Bowls than any franchise in the NFL. As a quarterback, 243 wins. Since 1983, the Detroit Lions have won 241 games.
They're just catching strays here. Poor Detroit.
So I mean, those are just there's a bunch of these, but that one was crazy. I
saw another stat yesterday. He has more victories against NFC opponents in the playoffs since his career started than Aaron Rodgers and Drew Brees. So he has 10 victories against NFC opponents. So the 7 Super Bowls, obviously, and then the time with the Bucs. I think Brett Favre has 12, so he edges him out a little bit. But yeah, that's even the move to Tampa was, at least initially, it was kind of random. It's like Tampa Bay, of all the teams, it's a very weird destination, but the guy's smart. He knows how to pick his spots, and he picked a great team that was just in need of a quarterback. And he silenced, to us, he silenced our doubts after the Falcons Super Bowl. That even then there were still people that were saying, none of this happens without Belichick. If it's not Belichick is more important, it's at least 50-50. But we've seen that, Brady on his own is enough to if not carry a team to a Super Bowl victory, at least make them competitive and propel them to greatness.
And one other record I would be remiss in not mentioning, just because it's relevant to playing in the AFC East for so long, is his record against the Jets. He was 30-7 against the Jets, and he got that 30th win as a Tampa Bay Buccaneer.
More strays being caught here.
Yeah, the Jets have yet to nab their 30th win of the decade. So his record against, shout out to Jets fans, hopefully better days ahead. But it is something to note. You can't talk about Tom Brady's run in the AFC without mentioning tormenting Jets fans because it is relevant.
He probably has a similar record against the Bills too. Unfortunately, I think last year Josh Allen surpassed him for the most wins at Orchard Park. So yeah, that goes to show you, or at least the most wins in the last 20 years because they've had some issues at quarterback. So just so we're not all talking all positives, what do you think was his worst moment as a player? Was it Deflategate? Was it a loss? Was it what do you think?
Yeah, I'll want to turn it back around to just random memories, but worst moments. I mean, if you ask him, right, it's his Super Bowl losses, losing that perfect 2007 season, one of the best offensive seasons in football history, and in 2011, that one they more so had a better. Obviously both Super Bowl losses were egregious. Let's be honest, but they got to him with 4. The Giants, which is good enough in the few cases that a team had a good pass rush, it worked, and losing to the Eagles in that game. For me, though, I would say, there are very few low moments in his career, right? But I guess we just talked about the Jets, losing to the Jets in the postseason at home.
Mark Sanchez.
For a shot at an AFC championship game has to be a low light for him. And that season that he threw a pick 6 and ended in the divisional round against Tennessee, might have been a wild card game even against Tennessee. They had a really good defense that year, and they lost at home on a pick 6 to the Titans. That's probably the 2 that come to mind for me.
Yeah, and that was how his New England career ended, was on that pick 6 to Logan Ryan. So as a former Patriot, just to rub some salt in the wound. And I think the way that went down, it led to a lot of people saying there's no way he's going to leave New England, on these terms. But also the way it went down with the way that they struggled on offense that year, that was probably him saying, all right, I've had enough of this bullshit of you guys, cheaping out on offensive weapons and not drafting the right guys. So I'm going to go to Florida and play with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and eventually Antonio Brown. So yeah, I would say the 2007 losing to the Giants. I think the Giants were 9-7 that year. They have a chance to go 19-0, cement themselves as the greatest team in NFL history, and it didn't work out. So I would say for sure. I think if you ask him, he'd probably say the same, is losing on that Super Bowl.
Yep, absolutely.
Did you have some other random moments? I know you said you wanted to talk about that a little bit more. Any others that stood out to you?
Yeah, so thinking about random moments, there was a Sunday night football game, I want to say in 2012, 2013. They were down 24-0 at halftime against the Broncos at home. And they went on this huge run and scored with 31 unanswered points against Peyton Manning. And they won in overtime after Wes Welker dropped a punt, and then they kicked a field goal with Stephen Gostkowski. Growing out his hair in 2007, I remember very vividly, just on that warpath, screaming at his teammates and demanding perfection every day. It was just a rare moment, a rare run where you saw Brady like that, just looking like he wanted it so bad, because he actually had, Randy Moss. He was very excited that year. You could tell. He's like, fuck yeah, I got like a good offense. We talked about the Eagles Super Bowl. The game that got them there, I think it was the same year, was the AFC Championship game against the Jags. I think I don't know how many different seasons we questioned his ability to throw the deep ball, and he just hits Brendan Cooks for this amazing pass to end the Jaguars season in a big comeback.
Yeah, they came back in that one too. I remember, yeah.
Against the best defense in football. The 2021 postseason run, beating Brady, Rodgers, and Mahomes to win the Super Bowl as a Tampa Bay Buccaneers, incredible. That's immortalization at its finest. Oh, and Taylor Heineke, of course, he beat him to get there.
And they won it as a wild card team. That was the other thing, is they didn't win the division. They beat obviously Tyler Heineke in Washington. They go into New Orleans. They go into Green Bay, which we talked about isn't as great as it used to be winning at Lambeau. But yeah, he beat two of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, one future great quarterback of all time, and then Tyler Heinicke. So
yeah, and
he's a footnote in that one.
And throwing 3 interceptions at Lambeau and winning 2 is just goes back to that. Like, you have to kill me to beat me,
And then should have went for the head, right? He's Thanos.
Yeah, for the head. Yeah. And then the one that speaks to his durability is and I think about this game for no reason at all every once in a while, is the 2015 AFC Championship game against the Broncos. That Broncos team is a top 5 defense of all time. The no-fly zone, Von Miller, Malik Jackson, just a bunch of polar bears up front. And he was knocked down a record like 27 times, maybe a little over 30 times in that game. And that's what it took to beat him, because they had the 2-point conversion with Gronkowski open at the end and Brady missed him. But it just goes to show this guy kept getting up and he kept getting up and he kept getting up, and you rarely saw him hurt. Kind of like LeBron, just like a long extended run of dominance and still physically there, not hurt, never injured. And so I thought that game is if you wanted to just talk about Brady's durability, just watch him get hammered by Von Miller for 2 hours in the snow at Mile High Stadium. And you go, this is what he is. He's not a perfect athlete, but he's made of granite.
Yeah, and a lot of that had to do with the injury that he suffered, I think, in the 2008 season, where he got his blew out his knee in the first game of the season. Even that was like a direct helmet hit to the knee. It wasn't like a freak play or anything. It was a very deliberate hit by Bernard Pollard, borderline dirty, because you're not supposed to go that low on the quarterback. And I thought initially when we talked about worst moment, I thought that might have been it, because he missed out on the chance to come back from the 2007 season. He would have still had Randy Moss and Wes Welker. So very likely, I mean, they went 10-6 without him. So you imagine with Brady, they probably go 13-3 or 14-2 and make it to the Super Bowl again. But I think a lot of people have talked about that injury being the catalyst for him taking his body, or taking the preparation and his approach to the game a little more seriously, and all the stuff that he would do with the body bands and the alkaline and all the weird kind of snake oil stuff that seems to be working for him. But it's very likely that if he doesn't blow out his knee that year, he's not playing till he's 45, because that injury made him, just take another look at how he would prepare. And I think that's a big reason for why he retired as well, is because he stopped having the energy for that. Because people have said that this guy was a machine. He was in bed by 8:00 every night. He's up at 5 doing his exercises, his workouts. And he said in his own retirement thing is, if I'm not 100% committed, which to him means 365 days a year, he's preparing to play football. And if he's, even 5% off of that, then he's not able to compete at the level that he wants to compete. So.
Yeah. And the TB12 diet, right? That's become I think the joke is tired. Avocado ice cream. I don't want to hear the avocado ice cream jokes.
Avocado ice cream, no alkaline water, no tomatoes, no whatever.
Legumes.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear.
The joke was like he's gonna eat like his first piece of toast in 10 years now that he's retired and he gets to enjoy real ice cream. So
I hope that his body doesn't unravel once he starts letting go a little bit, right? Like he eats like normal dairy and then his thumb falls off or something like that.
I hope it does, because it goes to show he's human. This dude's not a robot. He's been a robot for 10 years since he hurt his knee. So speaking of worst moments, Deflategate, was that legitimate? Was that just the league being sick and tired of the Patriots bending the rules, maybe not quite breaking them? But what did you think of the whole Deflategate controversy?
This is a silly waste of everybody's time, in my opinion. I'm not a Patriots fan. I just thought it was this the NFL picking and choosing when to be the arbiter of what's right and what's wrong, and how to really pick their battles and exhaust all their resources. Ted Wells had a 246-page report on Deflategate in the initial investigation. Everyone became an expert on pressure and footballs all of a sudden.
Yeah. I was going to say, we all got to know what the PSI level is, the required PSI level in an NFL football.
Yeah, and they picked a game to where they beat the living hell out of the Colts anyway. It wasn't like what the football weighed was even going to frickin' matter. It was just the weirdest game that they used as the template for their case. And I just thought it just gave talking heads a lot to talk about. It was the most exhausted topic ever. I mean, there were a lot of other things that happened in football. The Ray Rice thing happened around that time. So I thought the Deflategate was just gross.
Yeah, I mean, not to compare the two, but I when I played, some rec leagues and flag leagues, I had a quarterback that liked to throw a slightly deflated ball because it was easier to grip. I guess he had smaller hands. I mean, he's not 6'4" like Tom Brady, but it was easier to throw and easier to catch. So I get that it could possibly be an advantage, but not to the level where the guy is being suspended for 4 games. Like, it just got to it just became ludicrous. The whole thing was, this is an unfair advantage, blah, blah, blah. I mean, he didn't help himself by crushing his phone and trying to get rid of evidence. But to me, this was more like the NFL maybe didn't punish them as much as they wanted to for Spygate. So this was kind of a makeup call. They still lost a first round pick, got, fined a bunch of money, but it was definitely felt like a makeup call type decision from Goodell.
I think Roger Goodell handed him the Super Bowl trophy 3-4 more times after that.
He handed it to him later that year, the year that he was suspended. I mean, it was like a sports movie, right? The evil commissioner or the evil warden is like Longest Yard. Like, the evil commissioner is trying to keep this guy down, the hero of the day. And in the end, he wins, and he gets to look the warden or the commissioner right in the eye as he hands him the Super Bowl trophy. So
they almost got to the Super Bowl. They were thwarted by that Broncos defense we were just talking about. The following year was the Falcons Super Bowl.
Okay.
And that's when Goodell handed him that trophy, and Brady held back probably a shit-eating grin after winning the Super Bowl right away.
So I know we said we weren't going to do too many what ifs, but the big what if, just for his career as a whole, is, what would have his career been like if he ends up getting drafted by, I don't know, maybe not a bottom of the barrel team, but some other, maybe the Steelers, another good organization, or maybe the 49ers. What is his career like if he wasn't paired up with Bill Belichick for 20 years?
I think maybe we don't see initially as much winning because it didn't take long for him to win, right? The 2001 Patriots just had a collection of Hall of Famers on the defense, Willie McGinnis and Teddy Bruschi, and just a bunch of murderers, right? A murderer's row of maniacs that played defense. Rodney Harrison, Lawyer Malloy, just a bunch of goons. And that Ty Law, they put on the best defensive performance in Super Bowl history against the greatest show on turf. So I think if he got drafted by another team, it would have taken maybe just a little bit longer, but the greatness is there. The way this guy throws the football, he's so accurate. Despite having the most attempts in football, he's 29th all time in interceptions. So he knows how to take care of the football. He throws laser darts that are so accurate. So maybe he doesn't win 7, but he still wins 4 or 5 without having an amazing defense year over year. Maybe he still gets one if he gets Tomlin and they put together, or Jim Harbaugh, and they get some of these well-built championship level Super Bowl defenses. Then maybe he does get pretty close to that. But it definitely doesn't start right away like it did in New England. Yeah,
I mean, we've seen that a great quarterback can change a franchise, can change a franchise's identity. We saw recently Patrick Mahomes. He takes the Chiefs from being kind of an also-ran and an underachieving team with Alex Smith and those other years, and he turns them into a Super Bowl champion. Joe Burrow this year, he takes the Bengals. They're one of the kind of the unluckiest franchise, one of the most tortured fan bases in NFL history, and he's dragging them, by the scruff of their neck to the Super Bowl. So I think that's a fair assumption, is maybe he's not winning in his first year as a starter. But we see his career progression, if he's surrounded with the right weapons, and his ability to take guys that were kind of no names, or, like guys like Danny Amendola, Troy Brown, just guys that wouldn't really thrive on another team, and he's making them into Pro Bowl level players. And he improves everyone. And we've seen that's the trend with him. Everywhere he goes, any team he's on, at the very least, they're going to contend. If they're not going to win a Super Bowl, they're going to contend. If he ends up in Baltimore or any number of these well-run franchises, there's a very good chance that he's winning at least a couple Super Bowls,
Just his quarterback intelligence was just unreal. I watched, I don't know if you've ever seen that show Detail. On ESPN Plus. Peyton Manning was breaking down one of his games, and the way he runs through all of his reads so quickly, because he really extended his career by getting the ball out even quicker every year. You look at the Falcons Super Bowl, had no offensive line, he was under pressure a lot of that game, and he just got the ball out so quickly on these slants. I mean, their offense at some points wasn't really that exciting to watch, because it was a bunch of slants and rug routes to Edelman what's that?
Yeah, it's the death by 1,000 cuts. It's just little screens and dump offs, and it's the most frustrating thing, because he's not standing in the pocket for 5 seconds, or he's not rolling out and trying to extend plays unless he absolutely has to. So yeah,
he would just go through his reads so quickly. You just see him look up, and it was like an AI just looking up real quick, checking. Okay, check down. No one's open, or no one's open within the first 2 seconds, and getting the ball out.
Yeah, and you can see just from the numbers, like the turnover numbers that he has, it has to take something special to confuse Tom Brady. I mean, he has a few seasons with under 10 interceptions. He has a couple seasons under 5 interceptions, which is just absurd. I mean, that 2007 year with Welker and Moss, he threw 50 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. Like numbers that are just mind-boggling when you really look at him. I mean, he has a couple years with 12, 14, whatever. That's more normal. That's what human beings do. But robots throw, in 2016 after Deflategate, he comes in on a tear and he throws 28 touchdowns and 2 interceptions in 12 games. Like he's not human,
I just read that he's the all-time leader in playoff victories with 35. Second on the list is Joe Montana with 16.
Yeah, and I was listening to the Bill Simmons pod, and he was saying that if you include the first round buys that he's earned as a member of the Patriots, that's another 12 wins. Like if you include that as a playoff round that they advanced in. So yeah, that's not going anywhere either. That record, that's not. It's just, I mean, we talk a lot, obviously, on this pod about what ifs and how things could have been different, if he's on another team, or if he's not paired up with Bill Belichick. And but I think aside from all of the crazy accomplishments, the stats, the records, the most impressive thing to me is just the consistency. We talked about other quarterbacks where you kind of expect the progression to be linear. You expect success from them. You're all guys like Aaron Rodgers, Peyton Manning, the young guys, Pat Mahomes. You paint a picture, and you're like, okay, these guys are going to compete for the Super Bowl every year. These guys are going to be at least in the mix every year. But it rarely works out like that, right? There's injuries, weird things happen with coaching, blah, blah, blah. But for Brady, it seemed like none of that seemed to matter. No matter who his weapons were, if he was throwing to Rashae Caldwell or Randy Moss, none of that mattered. Like he was always going to get you to at least the playoffs, at least a top 2 seed. And that's to me, that's the most remarkable thing about his career, just the level of consistency for so long.
Yeah, there I don't know how many times myself and DC experts just write him off. And The deep ball's not there. He doesn't have any velocity in his throws anymore. He can't run, and he defied all of that year over year.
Yeah, none of that matters when it's nut crunch time.
Yeah, and I think that with that durability, it's why everyone was skeptical of his retirement announcement. I think that Tom Brady, if he came back, no one would be surprised. I think that he'll be dead for 10 years and still be in his prime. I think he'll be the first quarterback to complete a drive in a casket. They'll just do that 4th and 1 quarterback sneak and push his casket over the goal line. I think that his ceiling is unlimited.
Yeah, and like I said, we're recording this. It's February 5th, 2022. The 22 NFL season is still 7 months away. So who knows? Maybe he's retiring because he doesn't want to go to training camp. So maybe he's letting Bruce Arians know, hey, I'll be back in September. Don't count me out. So yeah. Any last final thoughts on the GOAT?
I'm sure there's a million other stats that we didn't get around to, but I thought it would be fun to just explore his career a little bit, talk about our favorite memories. We didn't have to dive into the analytics, just fun talking about, the best football player ever.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think that for football fans, even under 30, they probably don't remember an NFL without him. So if you are under 30, or if you're a little bit over like us, do yourself a favor, go to his Wikipedia page, go to his Football Reference page, and just read through it and just be amazed at how ridiculous some of these stats are and some of the stories are. All of his games basically are on YouTube, all the Super Bowls. Some of these I was a little fuzzy on them, so I went back to watch some of the early Super Bowls, the one against the Rams and then the Panthers, just go down memory lane a little bit. And I hated this guy for a long time. Now it's an admiration, and you got to respect the GOAT.
He did it to everyone, right? Like in New England, it was the Patriot way. He was kind of muzzled, and he admitted it on that show on HBO, The Shop, that 90% of the stuff he says is bullshit because he doesn't want to get any extra attention. He doesn't want the headlines. He doesn't want to create bulletin board material, any of that. So he said something like, they have a good corner on that team, and then that's him indicating, I'm going to pick on that guy like all day. I'm going to throw at him all day. Little things like that. So I'm excited to see what he does post career. He's already kind of shown us that doing this stuff with like Deepak Chopra's kid, and this Man in the Arena documentary, which is him starting to open up with his own commentary a little bit. Him going to Tampa, he kind of opened himself up a little bit more, started to say more things. He has a podcast that's not interesting, but his voice is out there at least.
And he's doing commercials. He wasn't doing that, and he's showing personality. And this is definitely a new side. I think that contributed to the hate was this guy he's a robot. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't do anything. The only emotion he shows is when he's yelling at his teammates on the sideline. And it's the Patriot way. And we don't get to see the human side of him. And now it's really strange that he's become like a very likable guy. I would never have predicted this based on his run in New England. So.
But he has that competitiveness that's going to be affiliated with his name forever, like Jordan. Looking at when you win that much, competition becomes your middle name. So I'm sure we'll get some last dance version of his career, and it's going to have competition and winner and competitor mentioned 100 times in the trailer, and it's going to be awesome.
Tom Brady Ultimate Winner. It's going to be like a 20-part documentary special. It kind of reminds me of Kobe and the evolution that he had from a personality standpoint, right? Like we didn't get to see Kobe's real personality until he retired and he started doing the commercials and the documentaries, the detail thing that Peyton Manning also did. So I'm excited to see that part of it. And I love NFL stories, and I want to hear all the insider info of all the things that happened behind the curtain. And it seems like now he's willing to talk about it. So maybe he'll tell us why Malcolm Butler didn't play in that Super Bowl.
Give me all of that. I'm here for all of those stories, more of the Jeff Darlington books, and I'm here for all of it.
Yeah, I need like a 50-part documentary breaking down every game, every playoff game, because he's played in 200 of them. So
anything about behind the scenes at Foxborough is like catnip for me. They're so secretive about everything. I'll take it all.
It's the KGB, man. That's what it is. And now he's coming out and he's going to give us all the, all the background info.
Now, this is fun, man. It's fun to talk just on the lighter side, researching and talking about our favorite Tom Brady memories. If he comes back, I won't be surprised. But I'm sure many episodes to come, we'll be mentioning Tom Brady on What Ifs because everyone had a shot at him. And we'll eventually get to a Patriots What If episode too. So thank you for listening. Please check out the SLS podcast feed as well. We have a show that we do twice a week there as well, talking about other sports as well in addition to the NFL. Leave a review. We'd appreciate that. We'd love your feedback. And we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Go win, no win.